Introduction to the process of white tea. The basic processes to form the quality of white tea include withering and baking, or drying in the shade. Withering is the key process to form the quality of white tea. White tea appears to have complete buds and hair. It is covered with fragrant, refreshing hair, with yellowish green and clear tea soup. It has a light taste and a sweet aftertaste. It belongs to the light fermented tea and is a special treasure among Chinese tea varieties. Part 1. The primary processing of white tea. The machines and tools for the primary processing of white tea. Because white tea is a traditional and historically famous tea, it has always been processed by handcraft. Therefore, it is still processed through traditional machines and tools including conventional pots, cooking stoves, and assisting equipment for tea processing. 2. The processing processes of white tea. The fundamental processing processes of primary making of white tea include withering and baking, or drying in the shade. Part 2. The fine processing of white tea. 1. After stems, slices, waxed leaves, red leaves, and dull leaves are picked and thrown away. Baking raw tea with low fire until it is dry enough, when its water content reaches 4% to 5%. Pack while hot. The key processes and techniques are picking and throwing away stems and flakes, distinguishing between levels, controlling the moisture, and increasing the aroma. Part 3. Take the processing of Fujian white peony as an example. Firstly, the ingredients for producing white peony are mainly the buds and leaves of two fine breeds, Zhenghe Big White Tea and Huding Big White Tea. Sometimes tea plants, buds, and leaves of a few Narcissus varieties are used for combination. The raw tea produced is called Zhenghe Big White Tea, Huding Big White Tea, and Narcissus White Tea. 2. The standards for picking white peony are first grown, 1 bud and 3 leaves. 1 bud with 2 or 3 leaves of primary white peony can be picked. The tenderness of fresh leaves should be white fine hair thickly covers the first and second leaves. White buds and leaves on the branch, in good shape, stout, strong, and tender. 3. Processing techniques. There are only 2 processes of white peony, withering and baking. But the techniques are different to grasp. Its primary processes include fresh leaves, withering, and drying. Withering is the most critical process among the primary processes of white peony. There are 3 methods: indoor natural withering, compound withering stage, and heat-up withering. 1. Indoor natural withering. Place approximately 0.3 kilograms of fresh leaves collected into a bamboo circular sieve of 1 meter diameter with holes, locally known as a water sieve. Hold the sieve with both hands and rotate it gently to evenly, and thinly spread the sprouts on the sieve. The requirement is to avoid overlapping. The process is commonly known as opening sieve or activating enzyme. Then, place it on the drying rack in a well-ventilated withering room and let it gradually wither. Do not turn. After about 45 hours of withering, when the hair on the sprouts has turned pale, the leaf color has deepened. Some leaves may be attached to the sieve, commonly known as sieve attaching. The leaf tips perk, commonly known as tail perking. The leaf edges slightly curl backwards and ripples occur on the leaf surface. At this time, its grassy odor has disappeared, and when the water content of fresh leaves reaches 30%, the sieves can be combined. Combining sieves means sifting leaves on one sieve. Keep withering until the water content reaches around 20%. Combine sieves again and carry on withering for another 10 hours until the water content reaches 13%. 2. Compound withering. Compound withering means withering in the sunlight. It should be alternated with indoor natural withering. Daylight withering should be conducted on a spring morning or in the faint sunlight at dusk. Sunlight withering can be conducted 2 to 4 times per day, approximately 20 minutes each time. It is best not to exceed 30 minutes. After 25 to 30 hours of withering, the water content of withered leaves is about 25%. At this time, the leaf color has turned dark green. Leaf tips perk and leaves droop. 3. Heat up withering. The room temperature of a withering room should be controlled at around 25 degrees Celsius, and the relative humidity should be controlled at around 70%. When leaves feel stingy in hands, timely remove them from the sieve and pile for 3 to 4 hours until the main vein of leaves turns reddish brown. The leaf color deepens, the grassy odor disappears, and the leaves give a refreshing sweet aroma. Bake them dry at around 80 degrees Celsius. The duration of drying is 25 minutes. Among the above 3 methods, indoor natural withering brings out the best quality, but it requires more time, while compound withering requires less time and produces a more mellow taste. But this method is harder to acquire, so it is not usually used. Heat up withering when appropriate methods are used. The raw tea produced can not only pass on the traditional style of white peony, but also brings out a quality that can be compared with the raw tea produced by indoor natural withering. At the same time, it can greatly shorten the production time. 4. Baking drying. The baking of white tea can be adjusted according to the weather and the withering process. On a sunny day, baking is usually not carried out, and on a cloudy or rainy day, natural withering is carried out. When it is difficult, indoor natural withering can be carried out first, until leaves are detached from the sieve. The leaf color deepens, the tip of the hair tilt upward, and the leaves are about 60% to 80% dry. Remove them from the sieve to bake. There are 2 baking methods, including dryer baking and bamboo frame dryer baking. If dryer baking is used, when leaves are withered to 70% to 80% dry, bake in 2 batches. The initial baking should be fast, at a temperature of 100 to 110 degrees Celsius for around 10 minutes. The second baking should be slow, at a temperature of 80 to 90 degrees Celsius for around 420 minutes. The thickness for spreading to cool should be 4 centimeters. Bake until dry enough. For bamboo frame dryer baking, when leaves are withered to 80% dry, bake dry in 1 batch. Spread 1 to 1.25 kilogram leaves in each dryer at around 90 degrees Celsius. Bake for around 20 minutes. When leaves are withered to 60% to 70% dry, bake dry in 2 batches. Discharge 0.75 to 1 kilograms of withered leaves from each dryer. The initial baking temperature should be around 100 degrees Celsius. Bake for 10 to 15 minutes. The temperature of the second baking should be 80 degrees Celsius. Bake for 10 to 20 minutes. Spread cool for 0.5 to 10 hours. During baking, it is acceptable to stir 3 or 4 times, but be gentle to avoid curling the leaves or breaking the sprouts. It is required to bake until over 70% or half dry. 5. Qualities and characteristics. White peony appears to have sprouts and leaves attached to the branches, with silvery white straight hair, drooping, curled, green leaves. Its leaf color is light emerald green or grayish green, with a natural form. It is shaped like a blossom. The aroma of its content reveals, with a sweet, mellow, and refreshing taste. The liquid is apricot and bright, and the leaf bottoms are thick, tender, and even. After brewing, green leaves hold sprouts, like blossoming buds. The aroma of tea hair is long-lasting, with a sweet aftertaste. 6. Technique and quality requirement. Although the process of white peony is simple, its techniques are hard to acquire. So finally, please think about the following question. What are the differences between the processes of silver needle and white peony?